Hello, my name is Jim Alexander. Some of you have noticed me skulking around on the OMTech user sites. What I've been doing is I've been upgrading my machine. I own an OMTech AF2028 80-watt machine, and I have been progressively making updates to it and upgrades to make it a more enhanced machine. The latest is to upgrade my stepper motors. The stepper motors that come in the OMTech for the x-axis is a NEMA 23 1.28 Newton meter motor, and the driver is a DM 545 alpha stepper motor driver. These two are being replaced by a closed loop stepper and a new driver. The new driver is the 2HSS57 driver. So what is the difference? First off, you'll notice this stepper motor is a fair bit larger. Not only is it a higher torque motor, it is 2 Newton meters, but it has this area on the back which is the encoder. And what the encoder does is when the driver commands the motor to go to a certain position, the encoder reports back to the driver to tell it that it has got to the position or that it has not got to the position. If it hasn't, the driver will continue to adjust it to make it get to the correct position. What does this mean in the end? Well, open stepper motors have a tendency to lose steps. The faster they go, the higher the likelihood that they will lose steps. Secondly, if they hit an obstruction, i.e. your head is traveling and it hits the stock on your bed, the stepper motor will lose steps. What does this mean? Well, engravings or cuttings can go off kilter and become askew. The closed loop stepper cannot lose steps. Another difference, the open loop steppers have a speed limit of 500 millimeters per second. The closed loop has a speed limit of 1,000 millimeters per second. Now, does that mean that the open loop can operate reliably at 500? No. The faster it goes, the higher the likelihood that it will lose steps. The closed loop, however, cannot lose steps. If it does, it will alarm out and it will tell the driver that it has failed, and the driver will send an alarm. So, what we have here is the stepper motor, the driver, a new sprocket, because the sprocket on the existing motor is press fit on. The new sprocket, an HTD 3M 22 sprocket for a 15 millimeter belt, clamps on to the end of the 8 millimeter shaft. So, what did I need to get this done? Well, believe it or not, most of it was plug and play. This is not an upgrade for the faint of heart. It involves a lot of colorful metaphors and a lot of tinkering. I should point out, one of the differences between the closed loop stepper and the open loop stepper is the open loop stepper has a number of dip switches on it. These dip switches include the current for the stepper motor as well as the number of steps per rotation. The closed loop stepper motor only has dip switches for the steps per rotation as well as the direction of the motor. There are no dip switches for the current. Now, the reason for this is because the driver is totally under control of the current to the motor. One of the advantages of a closed loop stepper over an open loop stepper is that you only have current going to the motor when it needs to change something, when it needs to move. Whereas the open loop stepper has to have drive current to the motor at all times, even when it is stopped and rested. Because of that, open loop stepper motors get very warm. Closed loop by comparison, are actually very cool. So that is another advantage to them. This is the electronics bay in my Alpha Foxtrot 2028-80 watt. You'll notice that there are 3 stepper drivers here. You've got the new Y or X-axis driver that I've installed for the closed loop stepper. You've got the Y-axis driver, and you've got the Z-axis driver. Now, this driver replaced the old DM545 Alpha driver. As far as wiring goes, it was pretty straightforward. You can see the new motor installed with its sprocket to drive the machine. Now, this motor has about a 2 centimeter clearance between the motor and the bottom of the cabinet. It just fits. I did come across an issue. You'll notice that the bracket at the back holding the gantry in place for the Y-axis frame has a cut taken out of it. The old motor did not come near that bracket. The new motor comes right up to it, and because of that I had to cut out an area to allow the motor to fully travel to the back of the gantry. The other change that had to be made, this is what is left of the cable chain that was mounted in the laser for the Y-axis or the X-axis gantry. Unfortunately, because of the 2 extra cables that come on the stepper motor, there was not a lot of room in it. Therefore, I replaced the cable chain with a 15 by 30 millimeter, and this is the extra chain that is not needed for the entry. So what does this give me? This gives me a hell of a lot more speed and no lost steps. I will include a video here that shows the laser traveling at 600 millimeters per second on an engraving. Okay, here we have the laser engraving at 600 millimeters per second. And of note, when I did this previously at 200 to 250 millimeters per second, this engraving would take over 6 minutes. On the Glowforge, it would take over 16 minutes. Total time for this was 1 minute and 51 seconds. Is this the last of my upgrades? No. As a matter of fact, this motor is for the Y-axis drive. Unfortunately, the Y-axis on the OMTech normally uses a dual shaft motor, which basically means on both sides of the motor there's a shaft over here and a shaft over here. And the drive rods attached to those shafts either end. I don't have a stepper motor for the closed loop that has a dual ended. There is one out there, and I believe ALI Express sells it, but I didn't get it. I got the same motor that I have on the X-axis, but I purchased a reducer. And what this reducer allows me to do is to mount the motor on top here, and with a belt, drive 2 shafts. And these 2 shafts, according to my measurements, work out perfect for the Y-axis system. I will be installing this hopefully later this weekend, and hopefully I will include a video that shows how to do it. Of all the upgrades I've done to my laser, I consider this upgrade to be the most beneficial after the air assist. I even consider it better than the chiller, because this fixes a lot of the problems that a lot of people have had with engravings going askew, engravings not matching up to cuttings, etc., etc. Since I've done the X-axis, I can't speak enough for this machine. It is an extremely reliable machine now, and I can't wait to see what it's going to be like after I install the Y-axis. Now, when I'm finished all of this, I'm going to have 2 extra drivers and 2 extra motors. The drivers are not going to go to waste. My plan is to install another driver into the electronics bay and have that driver tied up to the rotary. It will have its own dedicated driver. So the Y-axis driver, I won't need to unplug to operate the rotary. Now apparently Ruida has one of their controllers that allows you to hook up the rotary to the U-axis drive, and down the road I plan on upgrading to that so that eventually my rotary, my X-axis and Y-axis and Z-axis will all be independent and hardwired in with no changes whatsoever, and everything will be controlled by a software. However, between now and then, that's a fair bit of money, so I have to do this in stages. I hope this information has been enlightening for people. Having said all that, happy lasing people. I hope you are enjoying your machines, and keep an eye out for more upgrades in the future.